Hey there, welcome. My name is Alonda Carter and I am the Recovering Hunbot. If you have ever explored the world of scams, then you're probably familiar with the names Charles Ponzi and Bernie Madoff. But what about Chris Marco? That is probably a name that does not ring a bell unless you live in Australia. Chris Marco is a Perth businessman accused of running the largest Ponzi scheme in Australia that swindled $36.5 million from investors. He was charged with 50 counts of fraud. In this video, we will explore the alleged scam Chris Marco ran. To support my channel, I just ask that you watch this video to the end and give it a thumbs up. If you have time, please leave a comment so that more people have a chance to view this video. And now let's get to the topic at hand. Between July 2013 and October 2018, it is alleged by the Australian Securities and Investments Commission, or ASIC, that Chris Marco defrauded $36.5 million from 9 investors. One of the investors was defrauded $10 million. Overall, it is believed somewhere around 340 people invested more than $250 million into Marco's elite investment program. On the 12th of December of 2019, the ASIC filed with the Federal Court of Australia, and a hearing was scheduled to take place on March 16th of 2020. According to ASIC's investigation, Marco owes roughly $240 million to 132 investors. Upon investing with Marco, the investors were promised their principal investment was secure. ASIC's investigation revealed Chris Marco's available assets were not enough to continue operating into the future. Since the ASIC's actions do not include recovery for investors, investors have been advised to seek their own legal advice. ASIC sought to appoint a receiver to manage Marco's assets. Once a receiver is appointed, they would be able to identify and secure Marco's assets and then determine what assets may be available to the benefit of investors. Marco filed to delay the ASIC's hearing but was denied. A mediation before a court-reported register was scheduled for March 13th. Mediations are not part of court proceedings and therefore occur privately. Due to COVID, the hearing did not take place in person. 2 interim receivers were appointed by the court later in March. They were tasked with identifying Marco's assets and liabilities, the likely return to creditors and investors, and to assess Marco's financial position. In addition to determining this about Marco, the interim receivers were to do this for AMS Holdings, Marco's company. In late July, the interim receivers filed the report with the Federal Court of Australia. The court ordered them to provide a redacted version of the report to the investors. On October 28th and 29th, the ASIC presented their findings to the federal court. On December 7th of 2020, the federal court ordered the winding up of an unregistered investment scheme operated by Chris Marco and AMS Holdings. Marco was permanently restrained from carrying on a financial service business without an Australian financial services license or operating an unregistered managed investment scheme. Marco guaranteed big returns to investors who participated in his elite investment program. However, he was not actually making investments. He did, though, spend much of the money investors entrusted to him. When the scheme crashed, there were people who lost their homes and whose health suffered, all because of Marco's greed. What makes Marco's crime particularly egregious is how he used Affinity Fraud to line his own pockets. Affinity Fraud is a type of fraud that targets people belonging to a particular community or group. In the case of Chris Marco, he targeted his sister-in-law, Patricia Markopoulos. She says, looking back, Marco had it in his mind all along about what he was going to do. Patricia and others lost everything to Chris Marco. Marco's scheme relied on word of mouth, which came from family and friends around the investors. Chris Marco is Peter Markopoulos' cousin. Peter was Patricia's husband. The couple had invested with Marco for some time and lived a good life until 2013. In 2013, Peter had an accident that resulted in catastrophic brain damage. Peter was in the hospital for 17 months. During this time, Marco became a rock of support to Patricia. Marco visited his cousin in the hospital almost daily. There was really no hope that Peter would get better, and eventually Marco started to talk to Patricia about her finances. Although she and her husband had a business, Marco told her that investing in properties was not such a great idea when you can sell the properties and he could invest the cash for her. After Peter passed, Patricia followed Marco's advice and sold her assets so she could live off the interest from Marco's investments. Marco denies that he gave Patricia financial advice or to sell her properties. In total, Patricia gave Marco over $5 million. Although Marco's scheme started with family and friends, it grew to include hundreds of other people. Marco promised extremely high returns, and investors got that until they didn't. Those who participated over 16 years received anywhere from 7% to 40% per quarter, always on time and without fail. 340 investors were lured into putting their savings into Marco's money scheme, which totaled over $250 million. At the time, Marco was unlicensed and unregistered, and all the money went through his personal bank accounts. Marco operated this scheme for 16 years undetected by authorities. Receiver Rob Brower has pieced together the enormous financial jigsaw puzzle with the goal of locating where the money is. Marco presented himself as a private investor, and thus people would deposit funds into his personal bank account. Marco, in turn, claimed he participated in private placement programs. These are also known as high-yield programs. Private investment programs are based on the sale of bank financial instruments. The FBI views these types of investments as ripe for exploitation. Marco made the claim he mastered the world of international debt markets, in which he bought and sold for large returns, and due to its complexity, only he had the expertise to do so. Brower has not found any type of expert in the financial markets or banking industry that recognizes or can validate the type of investments Marco participated in. The programs Brower has been able to identify, none were ever successful. Brower says there are no returns coming from 16 years worth of participating in private placement programs. The money early investors received was taken directly from the money of new investors. All Marco was doing was redistributing money, which is a classic definition of a Ponzi scheme. The Australian Securities and Investment Commission were tipped off that something was not right when a complaint was filed in 2017. It took a year and a half after the initial complaint for ASIC to raid Chris Marco's offices, and as of 2021, Marco was still under investigation. Marco claims the reason he cannot give investors back money is because ASIC shut his operation down, and he continued to tell investors that they would get their money back. The problem is, he has been saying this since ASIC shut him down. So where is the money? What happened? Well, for one, Marco enjoyed spending money, and he spent $3 million on an iconic muscle car collection. All of his cars, though, have now been auctioned by the receivers. He also bought a number of properties, including 4 homes in a row on Kalgoorlie Street. These homes were rebuilt or renovated, one for his sister, one for his son, and one for Marco and his wife. He also purchased commercial properties. Of the $260 million investors began investing starting in 2003, about $210 million has gone back to investors as alleged investment returns. And then roughly $15 million was used to purchase properties, the car collection, $11 million going into failed attempts of private placement programs, and $12 million to parties closely associated with Marco. Although these assets were identified, it is possible that there are more which have not yet been identified. All of the investor money was deposited into Marco's personal bank accounts in Westpac Bank, which begs the question of why were there no red flags at Westpac? Westpac says there are legal obligations that prevent it from commenting on the Marco case. Marco claims the properties he bought and the various cars were just smart investments, and he denies he ran a Ponzi scheme. And Marco claims he was about to make a huge amount of money right before his scheme was shut down by the ASIC. Patricia took legal action against Marco and won. However, Marco has since declared himself bankrupt. As of July 2022, Marco is required to only live in his Mount Hawthorne home, and he had to surrender his passports. Marco is being prosecuted by the Commonwealth Director of Public Prosecutions. He is charged with 50 counts of fraud based off of ASIC's investigation into its company. Each offense carries a maximum penalty of 7 years imprisonment or 10 years if the person is 60 years old or older. Australia has never seen a fraud case of this magnitude. The closest instance is that of Melissa Caddick, who is now missing and presumed to be dead after her foot was found on a beach. Caddick is said to have stolen around $13 million from over 60 clients, many of which were family and friends. The Marco case is still unfolding. Do you think additional assets will be found? What type of sentencing do you expect Marco to receive? Thanks so much for watching. Stay alert and stay vigilant out there, and don't forget, you're beautiful and I love you.